Welcome to the STR Data Lab.
Hello and welcome to the STR Data Lab. I'm Jamie Lane, Chief Economist at AirDNA, currently sitting here in vacation mode with my co-host, Scott Sage. Scott, good to see you.
I think I have to join you for those watching on YouTube. Jamie has his shades on. I'm putting my shades on as we cruise into Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah. So I for those also watching, I have my cocktail here too, since we're recording on a Friday afternoon.
I guess I'm not as fun as you. I'm not as fun. I just have a Starbucks coffee.
Well, that is very, I feel like San Francisco of you.
I guess you can't tell what's in the cup. Jamie, what's your Memorial Day lineup?
So I actually have got a really, and I'm going to take these glasses off because I can't actually see what I'm inside with them on. I've got a pretty exciting Memorial Day. We're heading out tomorrow morning to North Carolina for my grandfather's 95th birthday.
Wow.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
James Harvey Lane Sr.
Your namesake.
He's my namesake, yeah. Hopefully I get his genes too, living to 95, and he's rocking and rolling at 95 too. So that's going to be a lot of fun, seeing a lot of extended family members for that. And then we're going to keep rolling down to Litchfield Beach in South Carolina to spend 7 days with 70 family members from my wife's side of the family. Her dad's one of 13, and it's always a vacation rental bonanza at the beach.
Did you say 70?
70.
Wow.
70. Yeah.
That's a real family reunion.
And it happens every year. It is, yeah. I think we get like 6 or 7 different vacation rentals for it.
Your family may make a dent on the short-term rental data we see show up.
Well, we do it every year. So the dent's going to happen if they ever don't
That's right.
do the trip. Single-handedly propping up dunes out in Litchfield. Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
But that actually prompted me, before we sort of dig in, I pulled some Memorial Day pacing data and thought it'd be fun to sort of get a sense of how many other people are sort of taking their Memorial Day trips.
Let's start there.
Yeah. So what's kind of fun is overall occupancy for Memorial Day. We are at 69.3%. Guess where we were last year?
69.4%.
69.3%. So pacing is right in line with where we were at last year, but we're getting there in like wildly different ways. And we'll get into it when we sort of uncover the sort of trends that we're looking at for this summer. But real weakness on the budget and economy side. Generally pacing is down in 1 to 2%, and real strength at the upper end, pacing up sort of 1 to 2%. And that is one big caveat. And that is on the coastal destination beach markets. Pacing is up for every single price tier. So even at budget, pacing's up 3%. At upscale, economy, mid-scale, luxury, pacing is all up. So we may be seeing impact from international Canadians. We may be seeing impact from consumers pulling back. But at least in the beach markets, people are taking their trips.
Let me ask the question that, why? Why do you think you're seeing that trend?
Yeah. So it's actually interesting. In the lead up to Memorial Day, we were actually pacing lower. So, and that's what, and when we get into sort of summer travel trends, forward pacing for summer is down in the budget and economy tiers. And in general, what we see is, at least on the sort of budget side for domestic travel locations, we see pacing down, but when we talk about the historical data, we see it up. So what that tells me and what we see in the data is people are delaying their vacation booking decision. They're waiting. like the uncertainty out there in the marketplace. And I think the stock, I hate looking at the stock market, but I think it was down another 1% today, down 1% yesterday. After last week, it was up 2 or 3%. So we're still in this highly volatile time, and we may be getting a 50% tariff on Europe. We may not, who knows? But all that volatility is causing consumers to wait to make their vacation decisions. And yes, people waited to make Memorial Day decisions, but if they're going to go to the beach, maybe they waited to book it, but they eventually booked it, because right now we're sitting here the Friday before Memorial Day. If you haven't booked your Memorial Day vacation, like, might be a little bit late to start packing up the car.
But this does seem to speak to a trend that we've felt probably over the last 4 to 6 months, Jamie, that general compression of the booking window. And we're seeing this like not just for vacation travel, not just for holiday travel, but even at a macro lens, we're seeing this in the data. And so I think the takeaway there is, if you're an Airbnb host, short-term rental host, operator, management company, I think it's, don't panic from a pacing standpoint if you're seeing that booking window shorten, if you're not booked 4, 6, 8 months out in advance, because that's the trend that we're seeing at a macro level.
Yep. And I think it shows up in the economic too, and data too. I'm in this economics group, and we're sort of discussing this sort of real disconnect between the soft and hard data, where the soft data is like the surveys of, yes, someone, how they feel, like, do you feel good about the economy or bad about the economy? How do you feel about your forward booking decision, your like purchase decisions, and all of those sort of sentiment sort of surveys? And whether someone's a Democrat or a Republican, they're all like, everyone's feeling pretty weak right now. But then you get the hard data on like, okay, how much are people spending? Do they have a job? Like all this sort of hard data comes in, and you're like, things are fine. So, and that's generally what we're seeing across the vacation rental industry. Like, people are saying they're hesitant to book summer travel, and like the data shows that. And then you get closer and closer to when it turns into hard data and people make that booking. And I've talked with a lot of vacation rental managers, property managers. I think you have too. And people are really getting worried about the shortening booking window, because it makes it hard to plan. But the bookings are coming in. They're just very last minute.
Makes it harder to price for sure. Yeah. And you're right. The consumer sentiment versus consumer voting with their dollars is a lot different. You know, I've taken 3 flights in the past 14 days. Each flight I go, I don't think we're getting close to a recession. All these are full, airport's full. But yeah. All right. So that's Memorial Day data. Before we jump into April, Jamie, you took a trip. Speaking of flights, you flew out to the West Coast. You were in LA with the cool crowd. You're at the Airbnb summer release. Give us a little bit about what you saw, what you experienced, and then I'll share maybe my thoughts on the maybe anticlimactic release.
Yeah, I'll say more on what have I experienced. I've never felt less cool than being in a room at that product release with all the sort of travel influencers that flew in from around the world for the release. Quite a few billionaires in the room. And I was sitting in the back with all the press and all the other nerds that were covering it. So yeah, it was felt a little out of my element, but it was really fun to see the release, talk with Airbnb's leadership team. We dropped an interview. I think it was last week that I did with Ellie Mertz, the Airbnb CFO, where I sort of interviewed her about the release. So if you want to listen to that, go back 2 episodes in your podcast feed, and you'll be able to hear that interview. But for my sort of thinking about the release, I think it was really a reset for Airbnb in terms of trying to launch and expand into different verticals. They've clearly seen a deceleration in their growth in their sort of core homes product, home rentals. That's what we do at AirDNA. That's what everyone probably listening to this podcast probably does, is rent out homes to guests on a short-term basis. And at least in the US, UK, France, Australia, Canada, they're seeing real deceleration in that business. I mean, it's still growing. It's just growing at 3 to 5%, sort of what we have been talking about recently, and not the sort of 10 to 15 to 20% that they need to grow to sort of be considered a growth company. They're seeing some of that growth in Latin America. They're seeing some of that growth in Asia Pacific region, but it's not enough to sort of support and the growth sort of goals that the company has. So this was their sort of attempt to move one into a new vertical of services, and then two, try to reaccelerate the homes business. Because unlike and maybe what we see from a Vrbo or Booking.com, Airbnb is very focused on how do we steal guests away from hotels. And they do a lot of surveys like the hotel industry does. And what they see is that a lot of guests that sort of choose hotels over short-term rentals are doing that because of the additional services that hotels offer, like the spa, like on-site dining, like massages. And most hosts just aren't able to offer that in their listing. So this is their attempt at being able to make it seamless to be able to get those sort of in-home offerings at a short-term rental, at an Airbnb, that you just aren't able to easily book today.
Totally. And they're really clear about it. If you've seen an Airbnb ad on TV or on social, like they're talking about Airbnb compared to hotel. It's very clear in their messaging. And look, I think if I'm sitting in Brian Chesky's chair, I totally get this expansion, right? He's trying to grow a large multi-billion-dollar enterprise, find a new vertical to expand to. Services is a natural place to expand. But I'm sitting in a host chair. And my takeaway is sort of this is a nothing burger for hosts, and it continues to be another release where there's limited focus on improving the experience for hosts on the platform. And they did release a few new tools and features, but on net and on aggregate doesn't feel much different. Doesn't feel like anything materially improved for me as a host.
I'll totally agree with you on that, and sort of asked Ellie about that in the interview of like, what's in this for the hosts? And she was like, unless you're a host that really wants to start offering services, there's not much here for you. But if you're a host that is more thinking long term about, I want bookings, kind of growing the overall pie of short-term rentals and the number of guests that are coming in, this could end up benefiting you, even though it's not directly sort of helping you sort of better manage your listings on Airbnb.
That's right. And it's the short versus long term, because you could make a bet, or your thesis being more people on platform means more bookings on platform, which would be a net benefit to hosts, right? If you have folks who are used to booking hotels because they get the spa and they get these incremental services, awesome. However, that does introduce risk, because who controls that service and who controls that overall experience? Is that tied to the reservation? Is it tied to the host? Still some question marks in my mind there, but agree. I think in the short term, again, I understand Airbnb's perspective here. Hosts and other hosts I talk to are sort of, okay, we'll continue onward.
Yep. No, and I think that's the right sort of mentality for most hosts is, all right, like they're continue to try to grow the pie. Now it's up to me to grow my share of that pie. Like I want the industry to continue to grow. I want our share to continue to pull away from hotels. Like it maybe doesn't change my day to day, but it does potentially increase the likelihood that my property is going to get booked in the future, which is ultimately a good thing.
So which service are you most interested in trying, Jamie?
So, and maybe it's just the point of in my life that I'm at, like just turned 40, like kids, like when, like maybe we want to host a dinner party for my wife. Her 40th is coming up. Like I'd love to be able to book a chef to come and sort of come to our house and cook. I not have to go out, be able to entertain, and me not being on the hook to sort of prepare that whole meal for all our friends and family. So I could absolutely see us using that, not even while we're traveling, but at home.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That could, because Airbnb is typically when you're traveling. You could totally use Airbnb experiences in your local market.
What about you? What are you going to book?
I haven't looked at it yet, but I like the idea of hiring a magician for an event or like a party if I'm hosting it. They're rare to see a magician at an event, especially if it's like a private event. But I've been to a couple magic shows in the past year and always walk away very pleasantly surprised and happy, leaving the magic experience. So maybe I'll bring some more magic to my life, Jamie.
That sounds awesome.
All right. Well, let's talk April. Where do we want to start? We saw demand grow.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can breeze through some of this because, like, I honestly don't find April that interesting. It sort of blew the doors off performance. Like, we knew it, and March was terrible because of the Easter shift. We talked about it last month. We were like, hey, like everyone, and occupancy was down, ADRs were weak, like everything was sort of a pullback period because we didn't have Easter in the month of March this year. And it's coming in April. You're going to see demand. You're going to see occupancy up. You're going to see ADRs up. And guess what? Like all that happened. We saw demand up 10%. We saw occupancy up 7%. Ridiculous. We saw ADRs up 5%. So like everything was good. And I think that was expected. So what there is to sort of call out, I think maybe it's the 2-month combination of March and April, because that's where I think we start to sort of see through the trees. And if you combine March and April, overall occupancy was still up 3%. So we had called on 2024 to be this sort of recovery period in occupancy of we expected growth for the year. There was a little bit of weakness in January and February, and March and April, and combined, we saw growth. I think more than likely, a lot of those bookings sort of happened pre-Liberation Day. And does that continue into the future? I think it's yet to be seen, but at least in terms of and overall bookings in the spring, for sort of the spring break period, I think was pretty good.
Jamie, let me ask you a question here. Put your economist hat on. Tactically or tangibly, like we always hear people talking about Liberation Day, tariffs, the volatility in the stock market. How is this actually translating to consumer behavior when booking short-term rentals?
Yeah, so we absolutely see the impact from Canadians booking short-term rentals in the US. So in March, we saw a 15% decline in Canadian bookings. So stays happening in March. In April, that was down another 15%. So we are clearly seeing the impact from Canadian travelers. And we also get data from the US government that's sort of, and Canadian government that tracks cross-border trips, whether by car or air. And by car, we're seeing a 30% decline in trips by Canadians to the US. And by air, we're seeing a 20% decline. So there's clearly an impact happening there. And it's not that Canadians have stopped traveling. Their trips outside of Canada have gone up 10%. So we're seeing massive increases in short-term rental bookings and by Canadians actually in Canada. So they're staying domestic. We're seeing a strong increase in the Caribbean and Mexico, in countries like France and Japan. So Canadians still want to travel. They're just choosing destinations other than the States.
And then how about on domestic travel? So within the US, are we seeing any changes in booking patterns?
Yeah, we have seen a little bit of pullback in growth from Americans booking overseas. So leading up to Liberation Day, we were seeing about a 10% year-over-year increase in bookings by Americans going to like Europe and the Caribbean. Now we're at about a 5% year-over-year increase. I think some piece of that is Americans choosing to sort of stay domestic and sort of choose American. And then the other piece of that is a pretty significant deterioration in the strength of the US dollar, which now makes trips to Europe about 10% more expensive over the past few months. So dollar fluctuation, and I've done a ton of research on this over the years, absolutely impacts guests' behavior on where they choose to travel. And as the dollar has appreciated, that's made Americans much more likely to travel overseas. And we see trips relative to pre-pandemic levels up like 40%. So like you hear all your friends going to Greece and Italy and Japan, like that's absolutely happening. And now, and that's still growing over last year's level, just not growing as fast as it was.
All right, Jamie. Well, you talk about, earlier in the episode, we were just talking about weakening or even wavering consumer sentiment with everything happening from an economic lens with tariffs and Liberation Day and changing policy. And that can impact consumer behavior in bookings. Do you see a more pronounced impact on budget travel as compared to luxury or upscale travel? And then maybe even urban versus coastal, for example?
Yeah. So we've got to think, and the answer is yes. But I like to think about it in sort of why. So a lot of the uncertainty along with the tariffs is how much are things going to cost in the future? And when you think about tariffs and their impact, the rising prices primarily impact people that are on the lower income spectrums, where a 5 to 10% increase in the things that they buy on a regular basis can have a major impact on their budget and ability to travel. So what we see for this summer is budget listings, summer pacing is down 3%. Economy listings, summer pacing is down 2%. In luxury listings, summer pacing is up 1.5%. So on average, pacing's down about 1.5%. So I'm not going to sit here and say things are all like sunshine and rainbows as we look out into the summer, because it's not. But and as we sort of talked about in the lead up to this, like we're pairing that weaker pacing with shorter booking windows. So as long as this uncertainty doesn't turn into job losses, doesn't turn into a reacceleration of inflation, like I think things might be okay. But we're now sitting here on Friday, May 23rd. We've got 30% tariffs on goods from China. We've got Walmart that has called out that prices are going up. We've got other businesses that called out like prices have to go up given the tariffs that are sort of impacted. So I think we are going to start to see in the hard data in through May and June that lower end consumers are having to pull back on some discretionary items like travel because of increased costs elsewhere.
So I'm going to focus this question even more.
Okay.
You have an Airbnb property now. You're an Airbnb host. Are there any data points or any singular data point you're looking at in economic data that may influence how you price a minimum night stay strategy, how you think about your booking lead time, and overall how you operate as a host?
Yep. And it is going to be clearly when I start seeing a year-over-year decline in demand in my market, and we could call that occupancy too. So I get how shorter lead times impact my pricing strategy of I just need to hold price longer. Because like if typically I was holding price to 3 weeks before and then would start discounting, maybe I need to hold price for 2 weeks before I start discounting. That my strategy in terms of maximizing revenue just needs to adjust given people's booking windows. It's not that they're not going to book. It's just that they're waiting longer to book. So I've just got to readjust my mental sort of framework. But in terms of shifting everything down in terms of how I'm pricing, I'm going to wait to do that until I see actually fewer bookings coming into my market that guests are clearly actually pulling back on travel to that area. So we haven't seen that yet. Bookings are still holding up. I look at my forward pacing over the next 30, 90 days, which I'm now doing in AirDNA's new performance benchmarking tool. Like it's freaking awesome. And like I'm pacing above my comp set, I'm basing above my submarket, above my market for similar properties. Like if anything, right now I'm underpricing my unit given how far ahead I'm actually pacing. Like I've got every long weekend booked out for the next 90 days. Like I'm feeling good about overall booking activity for my property. And if anything, I'm underpricing where I thought I would need to be going into this year.
It's got to be the pickleball court.
Absolutely. And I was actually surprised how weak May was, though. Like as we sit now, the calendar looks great. Going into April and May, it was not looking good.
So you felt the compression in lead time.
I felt the compression in lead time. I also felt like shoulder season. Like, and school gets out in 1 week in Atlanta. One of my primary markets is in Atlanta. It's down in Florida. And while school is still in session in those last few weeks, and there was not a lot of bookings happening up in my area. Now that school's getting out, like calendar's full.
Booking for in. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Jamie, as we wrap here, any final takeaways on April or looking forward to summertime?
And I'll just tell people the other sort of, and I talked about overall bookings sort of being sort of the indicator on and how I'm going to adjust my strategy. Maybe sort of fill people in on the sort of other things I'm watching around sort of recession indicators. A big one, especially when you're looking at your market, is sort of average length of stay. And that's a metric we sort of report on. So if your market's typically seeing like 3 or 4 day stays and that drops down to 2.5, 3.5 day stays, like that could be an indication that people are pulling back. And if you're in a weekend market, you're typically getting like Friday, Saturday, Sunday night or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and that goes down to just 2 nights. Like that can have meaningful impact on your ability to sort of try booking. And sort of if you've got let's say a 3-day minimum because of that, now all of a sudden you're not getting bookings and you go in and look at your market and see that, a lot of the bookings are coming in are 2-night stays. And that I might need to actually adjust my booking sort of windows to be able to get those bookings. Like that is a worrisome trend that could have real impact on industry performance. And then the other is sort of trade down. So if we see people sort of choosing maybe a mid-scale property when they typically go upscale, like that's where we get into like I might need to adjust my pricing strategy to attract guests in that may have otherwise booked me, but are now going for someone that's slightly not as nice. Like maybe they don't have the pickleball court. Maybe they charge $50 less, and those are the properties getting the bookings. Like if I'm not getting the bookings, I may be willing to charge $50 left and be competitive with that property to make sure I get booked. So those are the things I'm really watching is what are the length of stay and if my booking windows are actually making a difference, and then our minimum stay requirements. And then what are the sort of profiles of the properties that are getting booked? Sort of make sure I'm watching occupancy by price tier in my submarket and see if there's any sort of differing trends to sort of call out. And those I'm not sort of calling out specific sections in the app that I'm looking at, but like those are the sections in the app that I'm looking at to see if there's sort of any worrisome trends pointing out there.
That's right. If only there was a place where you could see all that data for your listing, your market. But really, really helpful, Jamie. Thanks for bringing the macroeconomic view down to your individual property and how you're thinking about it to maximize performance.
Yeah, Scott, any worries that you have going into the summer, or are you got your shades on and feeling good?
I think I got my shades on, feeling good. Maybe I'm just focused on this weekend with a long weekend in front of me. But no, I think as we go into the summer here, across the different markets in which I operate, I'm seeing strong bookings performance. I agree with you. We're seeing a reduction in booking lead time, but occupancy year over year so far has held firm for us and actually grown. So feeling good. I want to continue to optimize, but Shades are on.
Well, that's a very positive sort of sentiment to sort of end on. We wish everyone a productive summer, strong bookings. May strong bookings be with you. And hope everyone, as they're listening to this, had a great Memorial Day.
Enjoy your cocktail, Jamie, and enjoy your vacation.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.